I'll tell you one thing about Omaha. In the heart of matters, it's the heart that matters.
What is that?
It's Counting Crows. Omaha.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I know that
In the
song.
heart of matters. It's the heart that matters more. Or what it is.
Yeah.
I might not have gotten the lyrics right, but
That's where they see like a bum outside of church on a Sunday or something.
I don't know if I've seen the video.
I'm just trying to guess from the lyrics.
Based on the lyrics of In the Heart of Matters, it's the heart that matters. Probably a homeless guy somewhere.
Welcome, comrades, to the Art of Cinema. I am Colonel T, Minister of Propaganda of the People's Republic of F, dutiful arbiter of the information and commentary available to the people. Joining me is our glorious leader, General Secretary F, for whom the Ministry of Propaganda sculpts and shapes the mind of the collective.
Thank you, Colonel. That was well said. But unfortunately, it was far too much about you and not nearly enough about me. For I am the people's deliverance from the dual threat of capitalism and imperialism. But these are only the result of the original error of private property, Colonel T. That's why here in the People's Republic of F, all property is the property of the people, not any one individual, as though there is such a thing.
To each, according to their need, yes, sir. At number 5 on our list of the top 10 films of the 2000s, we have American Splendor, sir. Paul Giamatti plays Harvey Pekar, and Harvey Pekar himself narrates some of the film, and even appears in it. I know you like deconstruction, sir, and this is a clever way for American Splendor to break the fourth wall, as it were, deconstructing its own conceit by revealing the artifice of it all.
Hell yes, I like deconstruction. The whole of the capitalist-imperialist order must be torn down before the F-ist utopia can be constructed, Colonel. And what better way to do that than by deconstructing your own conceit by revealing the artifice of it all? You know, foreigners might not be aware of this, but where the American national pastime is baseball, the PRF national pastime is deconstructing your own conceit by revealing the artifice of it all, ball. I wonder what shape that ball would be.
In American Splendor, we see many dismal establishing shots of Cleveland, Ohio, where Paul Giamatti lives. It reminds me of Alexander Payne's shots of Omaha in films of his such as Election and About Schmidt. You always see Omaha during the winter when the trees are bare, when it's overcast, and shots of the city of Omaha are always set with a dumpster in the foreground or something like that. Cleveland is shot in similar ways for American Splendor.
That's only fitting, and I'm sure that when Sherry Springer Berman and Robert Pulcini shoot their film about the PRF, our factories will be framed with shining steel, and our agriculture collectives will appear in shots filled with the lush green of our countryside.
It's the 1970s, sir. Paul Giamatti's second wife is just finishing up moving out on him. He'd been supporting her while she was finishing her PhD, but now that she's graduated, she doesn't need him anymore. So she leaves him, and he can't even tell her, don't go, because Paul Giamatti's voice has failed him. We see Paul Giamatti at his dead-end job as a file clerk at the VA hospital. Harvey Pekar tells us in his narration that life couldn't get much worse for him at this point.
Here's what we know. When the state controls a hospital, the hospital works far better than when the people run it. That's why VA hospitals in the United States are the most sought after. But on the other hand, it's the US government running the VA, not the PRF. So of course, Paul Giamatti's going to be frustrated. At a PRF hospital, if Paul Giamatti had met his work quotas 6 months straight, we might have reduced one of his shifts from 16 hours to 15. And with that extra hour, you've really got time to deconstruct your own conceit by revealing the artifice of it all.
Paul Giamatti collects jazz records. He shops around at garage sales and so forth, looking for rare, good jazz LPs. American Splendor has some great jazz for its soundtrack. At one point, when Paul Giamatti is out shopping for used jazz LPs, he meets Robert Crumb, an artist well known on the underground comic book scene. Paul Giamatti is also into comic books, so the two become friends and start hanging out whenever Robert Crumb visits Cleveland. Robert Crumb makes a living drawing underground comic books, so he has a purpose in life where Paul Giamatti doesn't. Then one day at his job, Paul Giamatti sees the file for a deceased patient who had also been a clerk. It reminds him that time is running out, so Paul Giamatti decides to start writing comic books based on his own life. He writes the stories and does rough sketches, and Robert Crumb agrees to do the illustrating to turn the sketches into a comic book series called American Splendor. Paul Giamatti wants the American Splendor comics to be more subversive, more politically aware, like French movies. His comics will be about real life, not about a bunch of superhero nonsense.
Like French movies? What, are the comic books going to surrender?
Scenes from the American Splendor comic comic books, as shown in the film, include Paul Giamatti waiting in line at a grocery store behind an old Jewish woman who's haggling with the manager over prices, Paul Giamatti shopping for more used jazz LPs, Paul Giamatti patching up a beat-up old coat to get it through one more winter, and then he includes a number of scenes based on the lives of his friends and co-workers. So then it's the early 1980s, and Paul Giamatti has become well known on the underground comic book scene for his series American Splendor. But he can't quit his day job pulling files at the VA hospital. We meet Paul Giamatti's friend Judah Friedlander, who's clearly somewhere on the autism spectrum. He's very funny in the film.
Judah Friedlander is the comic relief of American Splendor, Colonel.
He is, sir. He provides a humorous contrast to the garish, uncouth, off-putting Paul Giamatti character. There's a scene in which Paul Giamatti and Judah Friedlander watch Harvey Pekar and Toby Radloff having a conversation about jelly beans that's so inane, Paul Giamatti starts laughing at the very people they're portraying in the film. Paul Giamatti runs into an attractive woman he'd known in college. They start a conversation that seems like it could go somewhere, but then she tells Paul Giamatti that she's a wife and mother. So that's the end of that. She drives away, and Paul Giamatti spends the weekend feeling desperately lonely. Fortunately for Paul Giamatti, however, Hope Davis is a comic book store owner and a fan of American Splendor, who decides to write him one day to get more copies of the latest issue. They start writing each other, then talking on the phone, and then Paul Giamatti invites Hope Davis to come see him in Cleveland. They go on a very awkward date. Hope Davis says she's a notorious reformer, that she expects to be in poor health soon, and at the restaurant she's very critical of the food and just about everything else. She has to throw up when they get back to Paul Giamatti's place, and then she tells him they should skip the whole courtship part and just get married.
The problem here, Colonel, is that Paul Giamatti is an individualist. That fraudulent American dogma leads him to seek fulfillment from another individual, in this case, Hope Davis. Paul Giamatti doesn't know that true fulfillment is to be found in a workers' collective. Yes, in solidarity with his fellow workers as they meet to sing revolutionary songs and to reinforce each other's commitment to the dogma of the one true revolution, Paul Giamatti would have found brotherhood in the comradeship of the workers. That's what the people should be looking for, Colonel, not this marriage and family nonsense, this rigmarole, frou-frou.
We see scenes from Paul Giamatti's and Hope Davis's life together. It's a love story from real life. Two people with a lot of flaws who love each other in spite of them. You like a person because, but you love a person although, as they say. And with Hope Davis to force Paul Giamatti to get his shit together, he starts to become truly successful with American Splendor. As a result, he becomes a regular guest on David Letterman's late night show. It makes Paul Giamatti into a minor celebrity. Letterman is only mocking him, of course. This was early in Letterman's career when he actually cared about what he was doing, so Harvey Pekar was on his roster of recurring guests the same way Mujibar and Sirajul were, for example, when they'd do Mujibar and Sirajul across America. But eventually, Harvey Pekar,
who, let's not forget, Colonel, is played here by Paul Giamatti.
Yes, sir. He gets tired of being made fun of, so he appears on the show and tells Letterman he's nothing but a corporate stooge. Paul Giamatti puts Letterman's audience down, too. So that's the end of Harvey Pekar's stint as a recurring guest on Letterman, and one of the best parts of the movie. The last act of the film deals with the time in Paul Giamatti's life that he and Hope Davis documented and coped with in a graphic novel they wrote together called Our Cancer Year. Without Hope Davis, Paul Giamatti would have given up in the face of his cancer diagnosis. But together, they get through it, and Paul Giamatti beats his cancer. The couple also adopt a child at the time, a girl. Paul Giamatti sees how hard he and his cancer struggle are on Hope Davis, so after years of refusing to raise a child with her, he changes his mind when he sees the joy it brings her to have the young girl around.
The state ought to be raising the children, of course, housing them in children's barracks and submitting them to rigorous study of the General Secretary F Manifesto. Ah, yes. When I look into the faces of the children, I see the significance of the passage of time. When you think about it, Colonel, there's great significance to the passage of time.
Significance, yes, sir.
With the passage of time, the children become the rookie draft class of the workers, if you will. And as an aside, Colonel, we yearn for the reunification of the PRF with the Republic of F to the south, for their children are currently being corrupted by capitalist-imperialist American hegemony. But on that great and glorious day, when they rejoin us, well, quite frankly, we're going to need these workers to keep the factories running.
Right, we are. The American Splendor comic books deal with mundane, day-to-day life. But it's in mundane day-to-day life and through our suffering that we'll discover the meaning and purpose of it all if we succeed in so doing. During Paul Giamatti's cancer treatment, at a point when he doesn't expect to survive it, he asks Hope Davis, "Am I a guy who writes about himself in a comic book, or am I just a character in that book? If I die, will that character keep going, or will he just fade away?" Then there's an interior monologue scene in which Paul Giamatti,
who, let's not forget, Colonel, is playing Harvey Pekar,
ponders the fact that throughout his life, he's seen 4 other Harvey Pekars in the Cleveland phone book. How could there be so many people with such an unusual name in the world, let alone in one city? It seemed all their lives had been linked in some indefinable way. What were they like, thinks Paul Giamatti? Who were these people? Where did they come from? What did they do? What's in a name? Who is Harvey Pekar? And you see, sir, it's through his struggle with cancer, and by writing about that struggle in the graphic novel that he and Hope Davis produced together, that Paul Giamatti is able to see the answer to that question: who is Harvey Pekar?
I can understand why the Americans would think that the meaning and purpose of life are found by asking, who am I? You see, Colonel, in my youth, I studied and mastered the American philosophy. In fact, it was once I understood the fraudulent, desolate futility of the American propagandists that I realized that I must develop F-ism. And our workers and soldiers can read all about the principled, constructive, bounteous F-ist philosophy as they complete their mandatory weekly readings of the General Secretary F Manifesto, that book which will get you closer to truth than any book on earth. Our secret police will be watching all of you through their rifle scopes as they verify that you're actually doing that reading. But the meaning and purpose of life are not found in the person, Colonel, nor are they found in the individual. Here in the F-ist utopia, we recognize nothing private. The meaning and purpose of life are found in the collective. They are found by asking, has the state imposed the correct system? And has the ideological mastermind who controls the state effectively tuned and refined the system to produce optimal results? For the state, as you're well aware, does all things better than the people possibly could.
Workers and soldiers of the People's Republic of F, American Splendor is number 5 on our list of the 10 best movies of the 2000s. This has been the art of cinema with our glorious leader, General Secretary F. Let us maintain vigilance against the ever-looming threat of an American invasion. You are required to report any non-participation or dissent amongst your comrades. Don't forget to tune in to the art of cinema again next time to discover which film ranks at number 4 on our list in your next mandatory re-education session.